All right, so that's going to be an obnoxious sound at the beginning of every video, so I apologize. There's nothing that we can do about it. We've already checked, I promise. Welcome everybody who's watching this after the fact. We are going to start first with some introductions. I have a slideshow that's kind of an outline of what we are doing in class tonight. I will use an outline frequently because that helps keep me organized and helps keep us on track. I will check the chat frequently and hopefully read it. Okay, note-taking methods. That's a great question. We will talk about that at the end of class during the homework portion. If you don't mind holding on to that, because I actually have a slide about that, I'd like to answer it then, because we'll talk about all of our homework for this week. Great question. First of all, let's jump over to the slideshow. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if that's okay with y'all. And I'm going to jump over to my slideshow for the beginning of class. All right. Here we go. Okay, so first of all, welcome to AP Biology. My name is Miss Becca, and I go by Becca with your parents. I go by Miss Becca with you if you prefer. And I also prefer Miss B, so I don't mind whatever nickname I'm given, but I prefer Miss B. It's just easy, it's short, and you don't misspell it. Becca can frequently be misspelled, so I just go with B, and you can't misspell a letter. So that's what I usually go with. First of all, I'd love to do some group introductions. Have each of you guys introduce yourself. I will start with myself, and let's get to know each other. That is the most important thing for the beginning of this evening. So what we're going to ask each of you to talk about, if you need to chat for some reason, if you can't use your microphone for tonight, if it's a technical malfunction, we can work past that. But please give us your name, your grade, your reason for taking AP Bio, whether it's just you find science interesting or you want to go into a science career or you were just looking for extra credits. Whatever your reason is, there is no wrong reason. Unless you want to take an easy test, in which case that is a bad reason because it's not going to be easy. How ready are you for the exam right now? Have you done any prep yet? Have you taken some pretests? Have you kind of gauged your abilities so far? How have you done so far, or have you even prepped at all? Be honest. Again, there's no wrong answer. I'm just kind of curious how you guys are coming into this class. And the last thing is, what is one concept, if you can think of one, that you know that you want to learn more about? So everybody take a good look at these, and then we'll go back to the screen with everyone on it. So your name, your grade, your reason for taking this class and for the exam. How ready are you? And what is one concept that you want to learn more about? And I'm going to stop sharing so I can go over here to the chat. And let's see. All right, so I will start with, let's go in alphabetical order. So Joy, do you mind starting us off? We're starting mid-alphabet.
Yes. Hello.
Hi.
My name is Joy. I already forgot what I'm supposed to say. I am a senior. I'm taking AP Bio because I want to study STEM in college. So kind of good to have the rigorous course load or whatever because our education system be like that. What else am I supposed to say?
Have you done any preparation for the course? How do you feel?
I took honors bio in freshman year, but I feel like I forgot everything because I did so much chemistry. So
chemistry can be that way. Totally not judging there. Yep, awesome. And then what is one thing, if you can think of one, that you want to learn more about in this course that you already know that you want to learn?
I think evolution, like origins, are pretty interesting because
Okay.
I have a more or less creationist view, so I kind of like to see where my views disagree and agree with like the more conventional.
That is a great thing to start off with in this course. I being homeschooled, I was around a lot of different viewpoints, and I experienced a lot of different things like you have, Joy. In this course, we are going to discuss evolution. We're going to discuss origins. We're going to discuss everything from the Big Bang all the way up. Not a crazy amount of that part of it, just because we're discussing life, because biology is the study of life. But we are going to discuss that, and that's going to be really good for you to know, even if you don't agree with it, even if you have personal beliefs that may differ, which I know some of us will, and that's okay. This is the important stuff that you need to know, first of all, for the exam, because we're teaching for the exam, but second, we meaning me, but we're learning for the exam. But second of all, this is what you will need to know in college, because college is going to discuss this. Even, biology, if you're able to transfer this as a credit, that's great, or 2 credits. After that, anything from ecology to zoology, any kind of discussion, pre-med, anything is going to discuss evolution as basis, as fact. So knowing it, whether you agree with it or not, is going to be important. So that's why we're going to study that in this course. So awesome. Thank you so much, Joy. We're happy to have you. All right. Alphabetically next, Leo, you're next. Are you able to give us some words?
Wow. I'm second alphabetically.
You are. We start with J tonight. We have some others that are not able to be here tonight.
I don't think I've ever been like higher than like 5th or like 6th alphabetically.
Yeah. Well, there you won the prize, Leo. Well, Joy technically won the prize. You won the 2nd place prize.
Yeah. So I'm trying to remember the questions. My name is Leo. I think that was one of the questions.
That was one.
So I've never been a big fan of learning, teaching, prepping for the test. So
Okay.
I wouldn't say I've done much test prep of any kind.
Okay.
My interest in biology is I'm a big fan of actually psychology, the more cognitive sides of it. So, and different parts of biology go very much so hand in hand with that. And that is really the source of my interest in biology.
Awesome. Cool. And then have you done any sort of preparation? It doesn't sound like you have, is kind of the point you were getting. Okay. And then the last thing was, is there anything you particularly want to study in this course? Or is psychology the thing? We're not going to cover too much of that. We're going to cover.
Well, like I'm taking separate psychology stuff. I mean, more so the brain type of things with cognitive functioning or whatnot.
Okay.
Yeah.
We will talk about a little of that. Awesome. Okay. Great. Thank you so much, Lee. It's great to have you. All right. Mr. Spider, I guess technically that's Carson. So Carson should have gone second, but since it's M in my list, I didn't notice. So Carson, would you like to go next?
Can you hear me? Are my headphones working?
I can hear you great. Yep, go for it.
Okay. I'm Carson. I'm kind of in between 10th and 11th grade.
Okay.
I didn't actually choose biology, but it was the lesser of 2 evils because I didn't want to take chemistry again.
I would totally make that same choice, so I'm not judging you there.
I enjoyed it the first time.
Okay. Well, good. Awesome. And what is one thing that you'd like to learn in class this year that you just know you want to learn more about?
Honestly, I have no idea.
No idea. Well, that's okay. That's a great place to start because you're going to learn a bunch of stuff. So that's awesome.
And awesome. I didn't know there was a test until Monday, so that's a 0 on studying for that.
Oh, the exam at the end? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that's the thing. You have the choice to take the AP exam. If you just want to take AP biology because that's, something great to get under your belt and have on your transcript, that's okay. If you decide to take the exam, which a lot of people do, but if you decide to take the exam, this is hopefully going to prepare you for that, to help you understand the types of concepts you need to continue studying for the exam. So the exam is not mandatory. However, it is, unless it is in your case, I guess family deciding that. But it isn't mandatory from me. I'm helping you prepare for that exam that you may decide to take. So hopefully that kind of makes sense, but that is okay. We all come to biology from different backgrounds. It's kind of a general science that's very important to know, and it's good to study. It's even helpful if you don't go into the sciences. So that's one of the things I love about biology. So welcome, Carson. It's good to have you. Thank you for sharing. All right, let's see. Next is in for Nicole. Nicole, are you able to talk with us tonight?
Yeah, my microphone does work. Can you hear me?
I can hear you great. Go for it.
Okay, so I'm Nicole. I'm a junior, and my reason for taking AP Biology is because I took a regular biology class freshman year, and I really enjoyed it a lot more than expecting to.
Okay.
And so I just knew I wanted to take AP Biology eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess I'm a tiny bit ready for the exam because I have been reviewing my notes, ever since I took that biology class because I just like reading back through my notes that I've taken before. And then the one concept that I want to learn about this year or more about is photosynthesis because I just think that's really cool.
That's great. That's awesome. Super cool. And it's what separates us from the plants. It would be nice if we could photosynthesize so we wouldn't have to worry about 3 square meals a day. But unfortunately, we are not solar panels. So plants are awesome in that. So we will definitely learn about photosynthesis. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing, Nicole. The last thing was, then we'd have to go outside. You should be going outside anyway, Orion. You should be going outside anyway. Sun is good for you, vitamin D. The last question was, okay, photosynthesis. I feel like you missed something, but I can't think of what it was. Okay, I think you answered everything. Okay, thank you, Nicole. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. All right, we see some chats. Let me check the chat. Okay. All right. Orion, we'll get to you in a minute. Noah, you are next. Would you like to share? Sharing is caring. Kind of for a second. Try again.
Hear me now?
Barely. But if you talk up a little bit, I think we'll be okay for tonight.
Okay. Is that better?
Yes.
My name is Noah. I'm in 11th grade and I'm taking AP biology because I want to.
Because you want to. Okay. That's great.
And I'm more interested in learning about physiology.
Okay. Awesome. And then have you prepped it all for this course or have you prepped it all for the exam?
So I have taken a biology class before,
Mhm.
And I've looked through some prep, but I don't think I'm ready at all.
Oh, hey, that's okay. I mean, otherwise, what would I be here for? So hopefully you're not ready yet. If you were, you wouldn't need me. Fabulous, wonderful. Thank you for sharing, Noah. Awesome. Okay. Orion, you have been putting in the chat, but how about you share? Unless you don't have chat right now. Sharing is not caring.
Hello?
It depends.
Hello?
Most of the time sharing is caring, unless it's sharing a bad thing.
Hello?
Hey,
Am I
I
faint
suppose-
at all? Because
I
my
see
mic's a
most-
bit touchy.
so I see the top half of you and a cat. Is that your intention? Okay. All right, go for it.
Hi, my name is Orion, and I have lost completely what the questions were that I was supposed to ask.
That's okay.
I'm-
Your grade, if you've prepped it all for the course, your reason for taking it, and I forgot the last one too, so you're off the hook.
Oh, I remember the last one. I'm in 9th grade. I have not at all prepped for the biology exam except for taking a different AP exam last year, so I kind of know what it feels like.
Okay.
But I'm not prepped.
Okay.
That's what the class is for. My reason for taking AP biology is because I would also like to study chemistry in college. And I guess that also leads into what I'd like to learn is how chemistry involves biology and vice versa. Yeah,
they're very intertwined, which we will especially study these first few weeks because we're just jumping right into the chemistry portion, you guys. As you probably have noticed if you've taken a look at the textbook. Fabulous. Thank you, Orion. I appreciate that. All right. I have heard your name pronounced by someone else. I'm going to give it a try. Rumaisa, is that correct?
Yes, Rumesa.
Rumesa or Rumaisa?
Rumesa.
Rumasa. Okay, wonderful. Would you like to go next and last, I think, but not least?
Yeah. Okay, so my name is Rumesa and I am in between 11th and 12th grade. What was the third question? Was it?
Why are you taking it and what do you want to learn from it?
Okay, I am taking AP biology because I plan to study medicine in the future and I have prepared for it somewhat. I've taken multiple biology courses, honors biology, and I went through a few orientation classes of biology to see what it was like, AP biology.
Mhm.
The next question was?
Is there a particular subject you'd like to learn more about within biology?
Yeah, I enjoy learning about anatomy and physiology, and I also think I want to work on chemistry because I kind of struggle with that.
Okay. Just because you're good at biology does not mean you're good at chemistry. Those are two very different things. So I totally get where you're coming from. Knowing one does not automatically mean you're going to be good at the other. The chemistry is very difficult. All right, fabulous. Thank you so much. Okay, let's see. Checking the chats. All right, so the next thing I want to see is how many of you guys, well, first of all, let's test your knowledge of Zoom, shall we? Raise your hand on Zoom if you have already the textbook in your hot little hands.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, do you have a physical copy of the textbook yet? This is not a bad shame on you if you don't have it. I'm just curious how many of you have it at this point. Okay, I'm assuming Joy with and Rumesa with the X means no. Okay, all right, so it looks like it's about 60-40, half and half-ish that have the textbook. Okay, that's all right. All right, Kiki, you can remove those. So in case you have not seen the textbook in person, I did want to go over some things. First of all, this is what you're going to be getting. This is a massive book. It is a lot of information. It has some beautiful pictures and diagrams and very helpful illustrations. There's not much fluff, which is a good thing, especially when you're trying to know what to study. Having random pictures that you don't need to be worried about is kind of frustrating. So this is a very helpful book. It is very streamlined, even though it is very large. And with that being said, let's jump back to our slideshow and we will move on to the next topic. Yes, War and Peace size. It's about 1,000 pages, counting the index and appendices. So a lot of that is study questions and introduction and appendices and all that kind of stuff. So first of all, let me go ahead and share my screen. Give me just a second to do that. All right, and so can everybody tell me if you see my screen and what is AP Biology? Can you all see that? Okay. Oh, you guys were writing in the chat. Okay, I can't see the chat when I share my screen, but thank you, A for effort anyway. Okay, whenever I ask you about that in the future, I didn't tell you this, so it's not your fault. Speak out in the microphone if you will, just so I can hear, because I cannot see the chat, but I will go back and check the chat every minute or two. Okay, so what is AP Biology? It is one of the hardest AP classes for the reason that it is 2 semesters of college level bio taught in 2 semesters of high school. It is college pace, it is college level, it is a simulation of a college course. A lot of AP classes teach 1 semester of college in 2 semesters of high school. We are not going to be doing that. We are going to be studying just as much as you would in a year of college, which means we are studying a lot. You will take approximately 8 to 10 hours per week, including our 2-hour class period, which we may go a little bit under depending on what we're talking about that evening and how long the discussions go. Those hours will include small and large labs depending on the week. We're going to go over research papers and help you with your research and learning about good sources, but also about argumentation and giving more information about things. We're going to discuss several different types of papers. We're going to do MLA formatting, similar to if you've taken a class with Blue Tent before. I think most, if not all of the teachers require MLA formatting. It's easy, it's straightforward, and it makes sense. So we just go ahead and streamline it all asking for MLA. However, other college courses may require other types of formatting. So just know that I ask for MLA. I have a little cheat sheet about MLA on the website. I will show you where that is when we get to the website. We will also do wet labs, which we will start one this coming week, or we will complete one this coming week. So hopefully, I believe I've received something from all of you, except for one who's not in class tonight, that you have at least ordered, if not received your lab kits. That's great. If you receive your lab kit halfway through the week, just make sure to do your assignments the other assignments at the beginning of the week so that you don't have to do them later when you're trying to get your lab done. So just prioritize your lab at the end of next week. We'll discuss that in the Monday morning memo. Hopefully most of you will receive it by Monday though. We will also do some database projects. Portion of biology is statistics and looking at Hardy-Weinberg, equilibrium of alleles in a population and studying things like that. And so we will do some statistics-based things with some computer simulations because obviously we cannot take 6 months to breed flies and look at different generations. So we are going to do that on the computer where you can do it in 60 minutes instead of 6 months. So super helpful. I have a few of those, especially planned next semester. And then we will also have 1 or 2 case studies, which are, you're going to read an article that's, it's called a case study. You're going to read a case study that's about 5 or 6 pages long, I believe, and study it very significantly. And then it's going to ask you some questions that you're going to write a paper based around. So that's going to be really fun towards the end of this year. And so we're going for practicing our math skills. We're going with practicing our data skills, our wet lab skills and our dry lab skills, our statistics knowledge, our argumentation and being able to put things in words, explain, describe all of those good words that you need for the AP exam. We're going to be studying all of them in lab and outside of lab. And that's the reason that we're going to have weekly discussions. If you read the Monday morning memo, which I encourage you to do Monday morning because it's important and it helps guide your week. The Monday morning memo talks about how we will be doing a lot of different things in class and we will be needing to do a lot of different types of explanations and a lot of different types of problems. So we're going to cover a lot of different types of things in this course. With that, I'm going to go back to class and make sure nobody has any questions. Let me see. Yes, MLA formatting is fabulous. I love it. It is also what I was raised on because when we get to, actually, you know what? I didn't introduce myself, did I? Great. I will do that in just a second. All right, last thing about what is AP biology, and then I'll introduce myself. I will cover as much material as I can in this course. I cannot make you learn. There's a difference. I will bring as much information as I can to your attention, and I will tell you this is a good thing to know for the exam. However, when you get to the exam, I will not be sitting beside you holding a note card with that information. Your job is to take the information that I am pointing out, that I am providing for you, that I am explaining, and that I am showing you in different resources, my words, as well as the textbook, as well as videos that I show. I do a lot of outside resources that are available to you that I just happen to curate. I'm here to help you however I can. When we get to those last few weeks, you will really need to double down and figure out what you specifically need to learn. I'm going to be providing a lot of general, everybody needs to know this information. However, maybe your struggle is photosynthesis and respiration. That may not be somebody else's struggle. So you're going to need to figure out, take practice tests, figure out what you need to study specifically to work on, and practice tests will help you with that. So with that being said, I'm going to jump back to Zoom real quick. Real quick about me. Let's see, stop sharing. I am a graduate of Campbell's science program, Campbell University in North Carolina. I graduated with a biology degree and a chemistry minor. I then was looking to pursue forensics or genetics. I had not decided because I loved forensic science and I also loved the intricacies of genetics. So I was thinking of those. I visited a few colleges and was looking at that for grad school. And then I fell in love with libraries, which is a really weird change of events. However, I was getting married that fall before I graduated college and I wanted an extra job. So I grabbed a job at the library on campus and I fell in love. I've always loved libraries. I always did library programs when I was a kid. And so I realized that that was really where I wanted to be. And so I currently have 2 careers. I am a teacher, as you are experiencing or will experience. And during my daytime, when I'm not out like Batman, I am a librarian. I do children's programs and I try to incorporate science as much as I can. So I do both of those things. That means that during the day, I might not answer chat at 10 a.m. because I have gotten to work and I'm running around doing children's programs. I may be in a story time. So I try to respond on chat at least once a day or email, however you choose to contact me. I prefer Moodle messaging so that we can keep everything in one place. Emails tend to get lost in general by everybody. So it's better to just work on messaging. So if you can message me over Moodle, like a lot of you have at this point, that is the best way to contact me. Somebody asked earlier, what do we call you? I got called Teacher Becca, Professor Becca, Miss Becca, Mrs. Becca. So you can call me whatever professional name works for you, but I prefer Miss B. It's not likely to be misspelled because Becca can be spelled like 6 different ways, and I have experienced all of them. So if you want to call me Miss B, MRS or MISS, I am married, but I'm not particularly fancy about titles. Miss B works just fine. So if you want to use that in emails, or you can use Miss Hilton, whichever you prefer. I will answer to both. I also am known by my theater kids that I used to teach in high school as Joey. So if you see a student in class named Joey, that is me also. What I have done is I've created a student account of myself, and that way when I want to see what you guys see, I can log in as my student self, Joey, and view the website as you. That helps me kind of know as far as my visibility settings, because you guys don't need to be flooded with a fire hydrant of information all at once. So if you see Joey in class, that's who that is. Nope, I do not have any kids. That is a good point. I have a dog. I will have kids at some point in the future, but I am not to that point yet. I am enjoying working way too much per week, and I don't have any kids. So I have a beautiful pit bull German Shepherd mix. Her name is Peanut. And if I reference her in class, it's because I love her. She is a troublemaker, and she is a perpetual teenager. So in case you were wondering about my dog, that's me. I also have a hobby of gardening. I thought I would show and tell with some vegetables that I picked from my garden the past few days. I grow lots of peppers and tomatoes. And this year I actually succeeded at growing some okra. So any okra fans on here? Fried or boiled or stewed, anything? Leo, you like okra? Okra is a love it or hate it kind of thing. I have learned that. My husband cannot eat it except air fried, where it's crispy like popcorn. They do mention okra in that movie. You're right. Yep. Too much slime for Orion. Yep. It is a love it or hate it kind of thing. Oh my goodness. That is very large okra. Oh my goodness. The plants can grow 10 to 12 feet tall. I was involved in a community garden this past year that the okra grew about twice as tall as me. It was crazy. Trying to harvest that is very difficult. You almost have to have a ladder. Anyway, so I love gardening. I love my dog. I go hiking, camping. I love cooking, anything about recipes. I like trying different ethnicities of food and trying making it. Asian recipes are usually my favorite. I've been trying some North African food, making that. I really enjoyed that. Segue into plants. Yes, we will discuss plants again. We will discuss gardening again. When we get to photosynthesis. So that's a little bit about me. Do you guys have any other questions about me? I can't remember if I included everything I was going to. I teach biology also in addition to AP. This is my first year teaching AP. So I'm teaching the same class, just in 2 way different depths. No questions. Okay, fabulous. You can always message me later if you have a question. Okay, fabulous. So let's see, where can I find how to message new people on Moodle? I do not know if you can actually message other students. That's a great question. Usually I've provided a forum for that. Me, yes, there is a messaging thing at the top. I can actually show you if you want. There's a messaging thing at the top of your screen, just a little bubble. Let me go ahead and share my screen because I'm about to go back to the other things anyway. Let's see. All right, so can everybody see what I'm looking at over here? You guys can see the website. Make sure to use your microphone, remember, so I can hear you.
No.
I think your video is frozen, and I can't see your screen either.
No, bad video frozen. No good. Let me go back. Let me try it again. Can you guys see me like normal?
Yeah.
Okay. Unfrozen. Unfrozen is the first part. Let me try sharing one more time. Okay. All right, how about this time?
Yeah, we
I
can see it.
Beautiful. Okay, so this is me from the view of a student. So this is what you should be seeing. If you see anything different on your end, please let me know. But like, I can't remember who mentioned it in the chat. Maybe it was Orion. There are messages on the right from that little message bubble up at the top next to your name. So you should be able to do that. You should be able to either search my name, or you can, if you see me online, you can just press my name and then message me. So there are two different options. I think there's also a little bit of information on messaging in the orientation. If you want to go back and review that, that should be helpful as well. I believe that's something that they included in the orientation. You guys correct me if I'm wrong. We tried to find all those little nitty gritty things and include them in that. So that is a resource as well. So the Monday morning memo will not always be this long, I promise. This is just me introducing you to the course. So bear that in mind. We will have our assignments always at the bottom, any extra resources. In addition, we'll talk about the supplies for the following week's lab. We won't always have a lab every week. Labs are about a third of the weeks of our class. Yeah, about a third of the weeks of our class. The other weeks we'll have more of studying, we'll have more of taking tests, practice tests, things like that. So the labs that we do have the week before, I will let you know what you need to purchase. If you ever have a question or a problem purchasing or obtaining something, let me know. I will differentiate what is in the lab kit and what is something that you need to purchase outside of that. If you have had any difficulty finding these things, most of them are pretty obvious and easy, but things like the liver, I've spoken with some of you about that. If you needed to talk with me about that, obtaining that, just let me know. So that is real quick while we were looking at the messaging. I'm going to go back to the slideshow though, because we have some other things to do on that. Okay, so can you guys see my slideshow?
Yes.
Awesome. So let's talk about why the exam is so difficult. So I did a little bit of math for you. If you make a 4 or 5 on this exam, you can earn up to 8 credit hours of bio. That is 2 semesters. Remember, we're doing 2 semesters of college and 2 semesters of high school. So using an example of a popular college in my area in Raleigh, well, outside of Raleigh, it's UNC Chapel Hill. It's part of our state school system. It's one of the nicest, considered to be the nicest schools. Also one of the more expensive, but it's state school. $1,500 per credit hour for out-of-state students. I don't know if anybody else lives in North Carolina, so I assumed this student would be out of state. Times those 8 credit hours ends up being $12,000 that you save by getting this AP exam, usually a 5 to transfer to a school like this, not including fees, supplies, living arrangements. If you count that as a semester of school, 8 credit hours, or even half a semester, you're spending almost $20,000. Instead, you could be taking a high school class, an exam, and transferring it, and you will save that $12,000 to $20,000. So that is why this class is such a big deal. Most AP classes transfer one 4 credit hour class, or 1 3 to 4, depending on if it's a lab science. Most of the time, it's just 3 credit hours for a non-lab science. And that would be significantly less money. So they are wanting this to not be easy because you are costing them a lot of money by transferring this in, by being able to. Just being honest about how the colleges approach this. So this is very, very beneficial to you. It will save you money if you make a good grade on the AP exam. It will also mean you don't have to take that class. You could potentially graduate a semester early if you wanted, with those 8 credit hours under your belt, or you won't have to graduate late if there are extra classes you want to take. So this is a significant undertaking, and there's a good justification for it. It's worth it. Save you 12, 15, 20,000, or your parents, whoever's paying for college. Just some information for you to know. 250,000 students have completed or have attempted and completed the AP Bio exam over the past 3 years. Some data for you: consistent passing rate of 3, 4, or 5. One of those before COVID was 60 to 65%. So almost 2/3 passed. Now it's 68%. They changed the rules last year because of COVID. The test is a little bit different, and we'll go over that. So the percentage of passing is a little bit higher. The consistent 5 rate before COVID was consistently 7% nearly every year. It is now 9%. That is a very small amount of people who make a 5 on this test. They do not make it easy. Compare that to the numbers of For example, AP US History, APUSH, 12% usually get a 5. AP Statistics, which some of you may be taking with Miss Ashley, who's awesome, great friend of mine, 15%, making a 5 on that. AP Physics C, all the way up to 37%, making a 5. So 7% is not a huge number. However, it's possible, and it requires a lot of study, and it requires a lot of pointed time taking. So how do they make it difficult? It's hard because it covers, first of all, a lot of material. There are 3 reasons that this test is difficult. First of all, there's a lot of memorization. There are a lot of very specific questions, specific scientists, specific, not necessarily dates, but specific concepts, tying them to scientists, or specific outcomes of processes, talking about specific molecules. They go into a lot of depth. So at some point you need to prioritize what you want to study and what you think is most important. And College Board helps with that, helps you prioritize, helps me prioritize. And that is the basis. College Board is the basis for how I organize my class. Second of all, there's application. You have to be able to read graphs. You have to be able to interpret data. You have to be able to explain processes and what those processes mean in the long term, how they affect other processes. And then there's conversation, which is just referring to the essay aspect. You have to be able to answer questions in detail, give evidence. Argumentation, which is what we're going to be practicing in our papers and our labs this year. So it's not just a history or an economics where, and maybe I'm overgeneralizing on those exams, but it's not just a memorization test. There are essays, there are application questions with data reading, there's statistics, there's math, there's chemistry. This is not just biology. Biology has, I think like Orion was saying, chemistry fed into it. Those things are intertwined. So it is difficult for many reasons, but it is a lot of information in a lot of different formats. So that's mainly why it is difficult. So let's go back to, first of all, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and see if anybody has any questions in the chat. Let's see. You can't message students unless the teacher puts you in a group with them, I think. Yes, I believe that is correct. I can message students, or I can message students. We will look into that. Orion, did you have your hand raised for something now?
Yes, I wanted to know if the potato in the lab was a specific potato or any kind of potato would work.
It's the potato you have closest to you. Is
It
that fair
wasn't
enough?
specifically like a white potato. It could be any potato.
Any potato will do.
Okay.
Skin color's different. That's basically the same on the inside. Okay. The potato flying around my room, yes. Exactly. Although I'll ask for white potatoes. Depends on what kind of potato you like. I like red potatoes. We actually grew those in our garden this year. Okay, I'm gonna get back on track. You guys can't get me off track. Okay, don't take that as a challenge. I will lose. Okay, can everybody see the Moodle site?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Okay. So up at the top, first of all, actually, let's go back and see that. So at the top of the website, you will see a lot of different links. And those links are things that I think are important for you to have no matter where you are in this website. So for example, if you click on, we're actually already in the week, but if you go to the, Miss Bridget calls it a hamburger, but it's just 3 lines. I don't know if it's technically called a hamburger. Doesn't look like one to me, but that's what she says it is. So if you go to, this is what it should look like for you right now. If you go and press this hamburger options menu on the left, and just click on AP Bio to the general website. That's what you see when you first come in. If you're there, all of these links will show up. If you click on August 16th and look at our first week, that those things will still show up at the top. That's because they are tagged to the top. They will not move. They will always be there. So they are things that you can use no matter where you are in class. So from there, let's look at the syllabus real quick. So this is a generic syllabus. we're just going to talk about a few of these things, and then we'll go into more detail on the slideshow. So we're going to meet from 7 to 9 weekly using Zoom. You guys experience that. If your camera or microphone are not working for some reason this week, please make it happen by next week. If you have any issues long-term, please let me know. Part of this class is contributing. It's being a part together. We haven't done that yet because we're just introducing ourselves to the class. But we'll have group discussions every week. We will be studying concepts together. We'll be doing that shortly in my slideshow. I have some questions for you based on the material this week that you have been asked to read. We will use those microphone and cameras, so don't feel like they are not important. They're very important, especially in a world where everything's digital right now and we are rarely in person, especially because of COVID. Cameras and microphones are very important, so please use them. If you have any issues with that, let me know. We'll talk. So this is to get you ready for the AP exam. You know, you already knew that, so we're not going to go through all of this specific information. If you want to, you can at another time. The 4 main College Board approved generalities or subjects will be focused on in this course. I use those big ideas to help me plan my labs and to help me plan what parts of the textbook we're going to talk about. Evolution is one of them. I believe, Joy, you mentioned that. We're going to talk about cladistics, natural selection, adaptation, the beginnings of life a little bit. Endosymbiotic theory, that's part of evolution too. Energetics, which is anything from thermodynamics to enzymes. We're going to actually do an enzyme lab next week. That's what we're going to be studying. Homeostasis, how our energy doesn't, how it does fluctuate back and forth, but it comes back to the middle every time, to that happy medium. Stimulus and response, we're also going to talk about that. Big idea 3 is information storage and transmission, anything from genetics and DNA, RNA, the types of RNA. We're going to talk about the central dogma, how the DNA in our bodies is duplicated, and then how our cells are duplicated. We're going to talk about signal transmission between cells, cell-to-cell transmissions using hormones and things like that, intermembrane proteins, transmembrane proteins, and the cytokine storm, everything like that. Genetic variation and how alleles can be transferred in recombination. Genetic mutations, how things can go wrong and what happens when they do. All of that is in information storage, all having to do with our DNA and how we transfer information as well. Systems interactions, we're going to talk about ecosystems, ecology, how organisms, how cells, how parts within cells interact. So interactions all the way from intercellular to intracellular to large organisms interactions. We're going to study all of those in some point or form. So hopefully that gives you an idea of kind of the topics we're going to talk about in class. Course goals, to teach you all of the principles that you need to do well in the exam. Scientific inquiry, recognizing themes, applying your knowledge and using critical thinking, both to concepts, but also to the applications of those in society and what that means. So we'll look at things outside of our textbook as well. Audio video capability, we've already talked about that. Textbook, you should already have it. If you don't, you should be on your way to getting it. Or if you really just want the digital version, God be with you. I cannot do digital textbooks. 1,000 pages is too much to do in a PDF for me. If that's what you need, that's great. We will have a digital version. It's on the publisher's website, and we will walk through how to find that. Lab supplies, you have already purchased those. We won't talk about that. You will need some of them for next week. We've talked about that. Your grading criteria. There are 2 categories in this class. There are formative assignments. Those are things that are helping you learn what you're supposed to know. Those are things like labs. Those are things like discussions. Then there are things that are assessments. That is, you have to show what you know. Those are tests. Those are leading your discussions, anything like that. Anything where you have to show your knowledge, those are going to be assessments. Those are 50-50 percentage-wise. If you want to look at the grade book further, you can poke around there. Feel free to look and let me know on messaging if you have any questions. And then I will send out a mid-year grade report, and that's going to be probably by Christmas. I usually try to get those out before I celebrate Christmas so that I don't have to do them while I'm in my pajamas with my family. I try to do that beforehand. If not, it'll be by early January, and then I'll send you a final grade report by June 1st. Hopefully, though, before your exam. Late grade policy, this is important, so please tune your ears in. I am doing my best to simulate a college course. College courses don't really allow late grades. So what I'm doing is pretty strict, but it's probably going to help, and I hope that it does. Labs are the only assignments that can be submitted for a grade after the due date. Discussion forums are rare, but in the event of those, or in the event of other homeworks, things like that, on the publisher's website, the Smart Book, which some of you have actually already completed for this week, good for you, that's awesome. Anything like that, you cannot do after the due date. This class is a train and it is rolling. We will not be able to backtrack. We will get behind. You will get behind as the student who has not submitted it, and you will have significant issues getting back ahead unless for some reason you come up with more hours in the day than I have. So for that reason, I'm trying to encourage you to do everything in its appropriate week. For the labs though, however, that are not turned in on time, 10%, aka 2 points, because these are going to be 20 points apiece, will be taken off each day that it's late until Saturday. Sunday, when it's 7 days late, it's going to get a 0. So there's no point even in turning it in unless you just like the feedback, which is great and honorable, and I appreciate that. The exceptions to this rule are family emergencies. You have to go out of town. Somebody's having a problem. I get that. I understand that. That will be allowed for. Previous communication as well. If you know that you're going to be out of town for a track meet, if you know that you're going to be out of town with your job, whatever that is. I know some of you have jobs at this point. I will work with you on those, just like college would. However, if it's just being late, sorry, I was late, you're going to get a late grade, and that's okay. That's not me judging you. That is just me sticking with my late grade. You are still perfectly capable of succeeding in this course. If you get a late grade, it is not the end of the world. Take a breath and move on. It's going to be okay. Talk with me. I will reach out to you if I find that things are being submitted late frequently, and we'll try to see if we can fix that situation. I'll reach out. And we'll see if we can make it work, because I want you guys to succeed. However, I do need to structure this class. Notify me via Moodle preferably, or email if that's the only thing you have access to at the time. If you foresee a problem, family out of town, death in the family, things like that happen. And so I will help you make alternate arrangements, but you need to reach out to me first. That is the main thing to get from that. This is synchronous. Please be in class. I do not grade being in class. However, you are not going to get as much out of this course if you are not helping and contributing in class. This is about you. It's not about me. It is not my ego. It is you finding out the information and helping discuss the information that you need to know so that you can be prepared for this test, and so that you can do well in the course. Being in class is going to help you with that. If you can't for some reason, just let me know and I'll try and work with you. However, bear in mind, every single class that we hold will be recorded, as this one is. Hi, folks watching after the fact. And they will be uploaded via a YouTube link, basically, to Moodle the day after. So I try to get them done and uploaded by 9 a.m. the next day, my time, of course. So that way, when you wake up the next morning, you can see it and you can pretend like you are in class. If you have any questions about the class material and you haven't been able to make it to class, please message me. I'm happy to answer questions after the fact. The other thing you will need to be able to is, oh, hang on just a second. Somebody's trying to join us. All right. Sorry about that. Give me just a second. And I'll check the chat while we're in it. I know I'm just jumping through everything, but I just want to make sure that everybody is here. Hello. Welcome, Emily. I don't think you've been here yet. Hi. We are talking about the syllabus. So you have only missed a little bit. Are you able to see everything, Emily? Emily, are we good?
Yes.
Fabulous. Okay, wonderful. We'll come back to you because we did introductions and I want to jump on you at the end, if you don't mind. So hold tight. We're just going to finish the syllabus real quick if you're okay with that. Let me go back and share my screen. Beautiful. Okay, so I was talking about submitting assignments. The main way of submitting assignments is going to be through images. If you want to take a picture of your assignment, or a lot of times the submission is going to be a paper of some form. If you have a Mac, you can submit as pages. If you have, or something related to that, you can save it as a PDF and submit it. I prefer a PDF because PDF can be read by every computer. Pages, I will have to be on my husband's computer because he has a Mac. That will be confusing for him because then I will have to steal his computer. So you don't want to do that, do you? Somebody else is trying to join class. Okay. All right. Welcome back. It also just takes me a second to bring everybody in class. So when I hear the ding, I'll have to go back and bring people into class. So that's a good experience for you to have, just to know that it's going to happen every once in a while. So submitting as PDF or as images are my preference. If you have to submit as something else, if you cannot for some reason submit as PDF, just let me know that that's going to be the case. But PDF and images are what I prefer. I talked about this class being synchronous. We are going to hold class at 7 p.m. on Thursdays as often as I can. If there's a time that there's going to be an issue for that, I will let you know ahead of time. And I will either try to reschedule class or I will make a recording. I would prefer to reschedule class. There will be one point in, I believe, the end of September where I will be out of town. However, I will still try to find a coffee shop where I can talk with you. The place that we'll be staying, I don't think will have internet, but if it does, I will meet with you. There are no points given for meeting attendance, but like I said, you're not going to fully appreciate the material the way that we approach it in the class unless you come to class. Watch it after the fact for the next best thing. Let's see. The security precautions, waiting rooms, and password and entry, I do my best with those. The Zoom link didn't work tonight. As you could tell, I will do my best to fix that by next week. Monday morning memos are super important. They help you kind of set your whole brain for the week of class and know what the assignments are and what you need. So please read those. First thing you do, read those. If you have any questions from that, message me and I will be happy to answer them. But a lot of questions will already be pre-answered in the Monday morning memo. These are the list of breaks and dates to know. Take a look at that, write them down, make sure that that is not a problem. If you have any questions, let me know. Office hours, I do not hold regular office hours. I hold a 2-hour class every week, and you are welcome to ask me to stay afterwards and ask me questions. I will be happy to do that to a point. I might fall asleep on you, but I will do my best. I can also schedule another time during the week to meet. It will most of the time be evening. For those of you who weren't in class earlier, I do have a regular day job as well. I'm a librarian, and so during the day, I cannot be on Zoom in the office. However, I'm happy to do stuff in the evenings if you have a question or you want to talk. I can also write pretty lengthy emails if that works better for you, or we can talk on Moodle messaging. If you and or your parents ever want to talk, you're welcome to ask me to make a Zoom meeting. I can send you an invite, not a problem. This is an idea of what our schedule is going to look like week by week. So the topic is going to be whether we are doing lab or whether we're doing test prep, whether it's an exam, whether it's break. And usually, as far as I know, the chapter that we'll be studying. So if you want to read ahead for the next week, you'll be able to see what the chapter will be that we're covering. So for example, next week we are doing chapter number 3 and we're doing the enzyme lab. So hopefully that all makes sense. Take a look, feel free. There are a few extra credit assignments. There are not many because this is a college course. College rarely offers extra credit. It does sometimes, but rarely. So if you have any questions about the extra credit ahead of time, one will be over winter break if you have free time and want to spend it doing that. And then I believe there might be 1 or 2 other extra credits. I think there might be one towards the end of the year. The main one though is over winter break though. So that is the end of our syllabus. And I will ask if anybody has any questions. And then if they don't, I will go back and show you 1 or 2 more things on the website. No worries, Ramesa, that's okay. All right, anybody have any questions about the syllabus? And you guys, I can talk fast, very fast. So if you ever need me to slow down, just let me know. I'm trying to get up through all of this because I know it's boring stuff for you guys, but it's important. So hence the wrapping. No questions? You guys are quiet tonight. Oh my gosh. Better not be this way during discussions. You'll have problems. Future rap career. Oh, present rap career. Thank you very much. What do you think I do in story times all day? Okay. All right. Then I'm going to show you just a few other things that are important to know. Let me go back and show my screen one more time. Okay. All right. So announcements is something that is not really for you guys to post. That is in case I have a problem that I need to get across to you guys, or there's a holiday coming up. For example, last year I used the announcements page when my husband went to the hospital. He decided when he was chopping wood in the backyard that his foot looked like a log, and so he chopped into his foot. So I had to take him to the hospital. We didn't have class that night, needless to say. But if I have an announcement like that, hey, we won't hold class, it'll be in the announcements. You will receive an email notification if you put your settings right, like the orientation told you. So that's where to go for announcements. AP Classroom is the next link that is going to take you to the AP Classroom login. We will discuss that in the future. The McGraw-Hill homework link is the other one that is in your regular week. For example, this week, which is the Smart Book. MH is McGraw-Hill. That's the publisher of your Mater biology textbook. Mater is the author and McGraw-Hill is the publisher. So that is why I use two different phrases. I will abbreviate it as MH from now on. MLA requirements. This is just to help you in the future when you are writing papers. Question I got was this week, does your reflection need to be formal? No, it doesn't. I tried to clarify that in the assignment information this afternoon. You do not need to use MLA this week, but in future actual papers, I will mention MLA and I will ask you to use it. Anything I've not mentioned here, like I say, is not important to me. I am not an English teacher. However, I do appreciate well-organized papers. It helps me know that you know what you're talking about. So some MLA, if I don't mention it, I don't care. OWL Purdue is an amazing website. Use that if you have any questions or clarifications, and then ask me because OWL knows more than I do. Hopefully that makes sense. The next thing is each semester, each of you will be covering at least one chapter leading it in our discussion. So our discussion in class is going to be Socratic. It's going to be asking thought questions and argumentation and asking very helpful questions that will help you guys exercise your knowledge of the material and discuss applications of it. What that looks like can be up to you when it is your chapter. So I have the dates of that week. Bear in mind, that is the week, that is not the specific night of class. You will be leading this in class. That is a presentation, that is a graded assignment. You do not have to attend every class. I strongly recommend that you do, but they're not graded. The only graded ones will be when you do these applications discussion. Notice my pun there. I do want snaps for that. AP applications. Okay. Each chapter is about a different topic. I am doing the first few chapters to kind of get you guys into class before you actually have to plan anything. So I will be doing the discussion for tonight. And for chapter 3 and chapter 4, starting in September, we will have you guys do the chapters. I am asking you to sign up. It looks like somebody's already signed up. That's beautiful. It is anonymous just because I am the only one who needs to know who signed up for what, because I need to make sure that you are doing what you need to do. Otherwise, I need to plan for that class if nobody signs up. So please sign up for a week that works well for you, that you know in your heart you will be coming to class. If there's any question of a vacation or a holiday or anything like that, please do not pick that day. Pick one that you know you'll be there for. You're welcome to pick more than one for extra credit towards your semester grade. You can earn 1 extra point for that semester grade if you lead an extra discussion. However, while supplies last, because there are not 20-something chapters in the semester. So feel free to sign up until there are no more chapters to sign up for. You can only sign up for 1 extra period. There will be enough between the 2 semesters for everyone to sign up for 1 extra credit one, I mean. However, not all of you will be able to do semester 1. So sign up for your 1. The 1 is graded. The second one, if you would like for the first semester, is extra credit towards whichever semester you choose. So bear that in mind. Please sign up for at least 1. The deadline for that sign up is September 9th, because I need to make sure that I know who's going to be presenting the week of the 6th. So if you have any questions about that, let me know. But in total, between this and the second semester one that I will open up later, you will be doing a total of 3 weeks. You can choose 1 or 2 this week or this semester. If you have any questions on that, I know that sounded kind of confusing, so feel free to ask me about it. If you need to change a week, that's okay too, just let me know. Also, external resources. That's the last link up here that I have. I will add to this over time, but these are my favorite links. So I have a question for you. First of all, this is YouTube videos, the first resource. Notice the table of contents on the right. Number 1 is YouTube videos. Number 2 is resources for free practice tests or parts of practice tests. Please take advantage of this. I encourage you because practice tests can be expensive if you buy like 40 books, and that's a way to get some practice for free. Let me read the chat real quick, and then I have a question. Let's see. Don't chop people. Yes, Jacob chopped his foot, and it was bad. And he has a nice, beautiful scar that's about 2 inches across his foot. Let's see, while supplies last, yes. So I was actually going to ask, no, Ryan's already answered, who here has experienced the YouTube channel Crash Course? Oh, that's no good, Carson. Don't cut your thumb off. That sounds like you were cutting a pumpkin. Were you carving a pumpkin? Because 90% of finger injuries happen when you carve a pumpkin. Ramisa has heard of Crash Course. Great. Anybody else? Okay. So Crash Course is one of my favorite resources because not only is it a biology resource, but it's also a literature resource, and it's got ties to both. So the brothers Green, aka John and Hank Green, are actual brothers in real life. Hank is a little bit younger than John. John is actually a very popular young adult author, and he has written a lot of books. The Fault in Our Stars, if you've ever heard of that, is one that he wrote. Turtles All the Way Down is one of his more recent ones. His younger brother, Hank Green, is a science guy, and they created these videos together to help students and teachers understand more of the material that they were learning. So they're awesome resources. Bozeman Science is another great resource. And so any of those resources on there, I encourage. I will add more over time. They are fabulous. Crash Course, it's too fast. So Crash Course is a crash course. It is for when you have already learned the material once and when you're looking for a summary. You can also slow it down. You can also do like 0.5 times and have them talk slower. That is true. So Crash Course is not the best first resource, but it's good when you've already heard it once and you want to have it summarized. Okay, so without further ado, let's go back to the slideshow. And I hope to get us out early tonight, but we will find out because we have a discussion to do. All right. So we've talked about everything on the website. So our expectations for me should be timely responses and grading. I'm going to do my best to get everything back to you graded within a week. My goal is when it's due a weekend, I'll get the grade back the following weekend or before. Quality teaching and organization of materials. I'm going to do my best on that. Y'all need to hold me to it. If you have any questions or don't understand material, you need to bring it up to me because I don't know what's in your head. You need to tell me what's in your head, what you don't know and what I need to teach more. So well-planned course with attention to detail. I am going to do my best on that. I feel like the course is well-planned and I feel like I'm going to be covering a lot of good material. If you have any suggestions or feedback for the future, I will include a survey at the end of each semester asking how can we change things for the future. I want your input. However, you have to do the class first to have the input. If you have any suggestions or thoughts in the meantime, let me know. Professionalism and a welcoming attitude. I love science. I love biology. I love everything about it. I don't love math sometimes, but you guys, we're going to push through it and it's going to be okay. I'm going to be as professional as I can be. And I ask you to do the same. And also adherence to guidelines and requirements of the course. I am going to do my best to stick to what is important for this course. I'm going to try not to sidetrack and jump off talking about my dog too much because we have a lot of material to cover. I'm going to do my best on that. Hold me to it. Our expectations for you. Timely submissions and questions. If you have a question about material, I ask you not to ask it on Sunday evening because it's due Sunday evening. I do not usually answer messages on Sunday evening. I will answer on Monday. I usually try and check it on Saturday, but Sunday is my family day. I do not do much work that day at all. I try not to. It's a rare day when I actually work on Sundays. I ask you to ask your questions, preferably by Friday. That gives me 24 hours to research a response if necessary and get back to you about it. When you are in college, you do not have unlimited 24/7 access to your teacher. Your professor is in class or in his office from 8 to 5, and then he goes home for the weekend and spends time with his family. I ask you to treat me the same, even though it feels like I am free because I am a digital teacher who is not in person. I also take off time during the weekend, and so I ask you to ask your questions similarly. Timely submissions as well. We've talked about the late grade. If you didn't hear that, please go back and read it. It's very important. I will hold you to that. Quality of original thoughts and research. This is a junior, senior level course. This is a college level course. It's both of those at the same time. Please produce your own thoughts. Please contribute to the discussion. Be positive, be upbeat, be proactive and thoughtful in our discussions, and you will make everybody's lives 10 times better. Positive contribution in group discussions is also a part of that. Professionalism and conversation, like I said, I expect that for me and I expect it for you too. It is important in life. It's important that you be professional with your professors in college. I'm going to ask the same. I am down to earth. That doesn't mean that we should be rude to each other. That means that we should be kind and professional, but honest is okay. Adherence to guidelines and requirements of the course, I'm going to hold to them. I ask you to as well. All right. Questions before we begin the shorter second half of our discussion.
What note-taking methods do you suggest for during class?
During class, that's a great question. The reason that I'm asking you to do, and this is going into our homework for the week, so thank you, it's a good transition. The reason why I ask you to do those note-taking homework in the beginning is because a lot of people get to college and they realize they don't know how to study. They don't know how to take notes. They don't know how to study in their homework. They don't know how to turn a textbook that's 1,000 pages into studyable material. And so I actually tutored for several years in college. And what I found is that people didn't need to know the material. People needed to learn how to study. So those 3 note-taking physical ways of writing notes, it's okay if your handwriting isn't perfect. You need to be able to read your own handwriting. I don't need to be able to think it's beautiful cursive that, reminds me of my grandmother's handwriting. It's okay if it doesn't. If you can read it, I'm happy. It needs to be useful for you. So whatever works of those 3, I would recommend. You can take notes however you want from class. You can take notes however you want in class. I don't recommend a specific way. However, I'm not going to be teaching very much in class. My goal is for you to read the material beforehand, to have read through it at least once, if not twice, complete the SMART book, which some of you actually already have, which reinforces those materials and asks the questions again and is somewhat repetitive, but in a good way. And then when you get to class, we're going to summarize everything, the big ideas, some of the equations or the statistics kind of stuff, the chemistry, and then we're going to do a discussion. So this is not going to be a 2-hour lecture every week. That's a good point to bring up. I will be lecturing hopefully around 15 minutes, and then we'll be doing group discussions and studying and things like that. So with that in mind, I would ask you to have most of your notes taken before you get to class, if that will help answer the question. Let's see. Okay. All right, so I'm going to share my screen and we're going to ask some questions. You ready? All right, here we go. So I have picked out a few questions that I think are important concepts for class. So number 1, and I need a microphone, please, for these. We need to have some discussion. So if you have a thought, just go ahead and chime in. I'm not asking for hands raised. We are all adults here. Why is it important to follow the scientific process? Who has a thought on that? Feel free to use your book and contribute whatever thought you may have. This is not a yes or no question.
I guess, well, of course, there's many reasons. One, the first that came to my mind is the repeatability of experiments. I'm not quite sure if that's the right word for it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Where typically for something really to be valid, replicability, that's the word. For something really to be valid, for it to be of much use, other people need to be able to replicate its results, and to be able to do that easily, it's much more easy if you've followed sort of an established path, a guideline, and it just makes many things easier in that regard with conforming to that, I guess.
Awesome. And real quick, especially the first few weeks when I'm getting used to everybody's voices, can you tell us who you are when you are answering the question?
Oh, this was Leo.
Leo, thank you, wonderful Leo. Awesome. Just because I don't know everybody's voices yet. I will eventually, but it will take me a few weeks. Okay, does anybody else have any thoughts they want to contribute about that? That's a great point. Repeatability, replicability, either one of those is a great word for that.
This is Nicole. I would also add that it's an organized process that, like Leo already said, was really easy to duplicate. So since it's organized, you have steps to follow, which can help keep you on track if you're performing the experiment yourself.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks, Nicole. Any other thoughts?
This is Joy. I was thinking that it also adds to the credibility of a scientist's work, like if they're kind of following a process that's generally accepted as reliable, then that helps.
Awesome. Absolutely. Reliability and the credibility of the scientist.
This is Orion as well. I just wanted to chime in that also on the failing side of things, if you do fail, it's much easier for you to make, I think, to make an opposite hypothesis.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like if you're doing a math problem and you show your work, it's a lot easier to figure out what you did wrong than it is if you don't show your work. So showing your work in math is important, and showing your work in the science experiment that you're doing and following that process is very important as well. It helps you troubleshoot. It's a good point. Anybody else? And if you see anybody has chimed in on chat, I encourage you to use your microphone instead. But if you do chime in on chat, can somebody else read it for me? If it is an answer to the question. If it's random, that's okay. Okay, cool. Those are all great points. Repeatability, credibility, all of that structure, help you troubleshoot. Those are all great points. These are good things to remember about the scientific method. All right, next question. What is homeostasis? And part two of the question, feel free to answer one or both. What are some examples of when a body doesn't have it?
This is Noah.
This is Orion again. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Homeostasis is a state of biological balance.
Mhm.
When a body doesn't have it, the body can't maintain certain functions, and usually it's when someone's very sick.
Okay,
I
awesome.
believe also, this is Orion, when someone is pregnant, homeostasis is out of whack.
I guess you could say that. Homeostasis being the balance. I think that the hormones, progesterone, estrogen, all of those kind of things work together to try and keep the body in balance. But as you can tell from the stereotype of angry pregnant women, I mean, things are obviously at least partially out of balance. Not anything that the woman can change, or, you know, it's not really necessarily her fault. It just happens during pregnancy. So that is a fair point. What about some more?
This is Joy.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
Oh, I think reptiles like aren't able to, or like just cold-blooded
Yeah.
animals in general can't maintain body temperature at least, which is an aspect of homeostasis.
Absolutely. I actually saw that happen in person, kind of in a crazy way. When I was in college, we had a lab professor who liked to keep animals in his lab. He taught zoology and ecology. He was known as being a little bit crazy, but he was awesome. So he had tarantulas, he had snakes, and his snake was in a basement lab with only the heat lamp for a source of heat. There was really not much sun in the room. And the snake got to the point of, like you're saying, cold-blooded. He was not able to keep himself warm. So he would snuggle up to the light, the heat lamp, and he actually got sunburn. So they actually had to remove him from that tank and treat him medically because he was so close to that light because he couldn't produce his own heat. So absolutely, snakes and reptiles are an example of that being cold-blooded. Great. Anything else?
External homeostasis.
Explain that.
Like your body can't do it yourself, so you require the environment to do it for you, like needing
Ah.
an external heat source.
Okay. Homeostasis through external means. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. Great. What is natural selection? Be specific or general. And part 2, what is the significance of it in ecosystems?
This is Carson.
Hi.
Natural selection is usually the process of like survival of the fittest and organisms surviving based off of their, what's the word? Genes, I guess.
Okay,
And
yeah.
organisms with the correct mutations will survive, and those that don't won't reproduce.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely a big portion of it. Yeah. Anybody else have anything else?
This is Nicole, and I was going to add that so with natural selection, typically the animals that have the traits that better support them in whatever environment they're in will survive. So if these traits are kind of different or weird, these mutations will help them, and then slowly the mutations will become more reliable traits, I guess, that carry on into future generations.
Right. So part of what Carson's saying, it's a genetic level, but also Nicole, I think you said, it's also the physical representation. It's the phenotype, the physical representation of what that mutation does. It's like the beaks of the finches. If you have one certain type of beak, if you have a super pointy beak, maybe you want to eat insects and that helps you. And so you're going to be better adapted to eating insects. But if you're in a place where you don't have any insects, then that is going to naturally unselect you because you only can eat insects. You can't crush seeds in your beak because you require a thicker, chunkier beak to crush seeds. So if you can only eat insects, if you've adapted that way, you're naturally going to be not able to survive because your food isn't there. So it works both ways. You're absolutely right. Genetics and phenotype. Absolutely. Anybody else have any thoughts? Okay. All right. And I'm not expecting a certain number of answers for these. I'm just, any thoughts that you have, feel free to share. And folks, take notes if you want, or you can just listen. How does the textbook define species? What important phrase is missing? And I gave you a key to think of mules. So if you have your textbook, feel free to pull it out. Anybody have any ideas on this? So what are the important parts of species? What does a species mean? Okay, so talking about species as, so if you take a look actually on beginning of chapter 1, page 3, we talk about organizing diversity, we talk about taxonomy and systematics. They talk about domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, all of those important things that we can organize using. Species is defined by them as a group of interbreeding individuals. Interbreeding, but does anybody know what the genetics of a mule are? Anybody know what that is?
Half donkey, half horse.
Right. So donkeys and horses are 2 different species, right?
Yeah.
So there is a question whether mules are their own species because they are sterile. They are born with an odd number of chromosomes, odd number of chromosomes, and odd number of copies of chromosomes. So because of that, They're not able to divide it evenly in their sex cells, and as a result, they can't really reproduce. So, is a mule a species? What do you think?
No, because they can't reproduce, but I feel like that's a wrong answer.
Not according to this definition.
So it says interbreeding. What do you think?
Well, they definitely can't interbreed.
Okay. So it's preventing them from actually producing viable offspring, right?
But I would think that we would have to consider other animals that are hybrids and could possibly breed.
Okay, like what?
I'm forgetting the name of it. It's like a zebra and an ocala or something.
Well, liger's one.
Liger.
that
That's a
fully
wrong
endowed. There are several different ones. You're right. There is one that is based on a zebra. I think it's a zebra and a type of horse. It's an interesting thought. There are scientists that debate that. So, species is interbreeding and produce viable offspring is, I think, the important part. Well, an important part. Okay, moving on to module 2. Lemon juice has approximately 9.8 times 10 to the negative third hydrogen ions in solution. Calculate the pH of this solution. What would the pH be? Feel free to shout out your answer when you get it.
Would the pH be 2?
Okay. I guess you rounded with that.
I got 2 as well.
Okay. Awesome. So written out, because we got to show our work, negative log of the concentration of hydrogen ions. So negative because it's inverse. So it's going to be, the smaller number is the bigger pH. So we have a pretty big number for hydrogen ions. It's only 10 to the negative third. So it ends up being 2.01. Or if you rounded to the 1, 2, 3, 4 type of pH scale that we usually see, they may have, if they ask this kind of question on the test, they may put 2. So you may pick 2 in that situation. Yes, the lemon juice pH is usually around 2. Good job. Awesome. Next question about pH, just one more. A pH of 11 is how many times more basic than a pH of 7? Remember, this is a logarithmic scale.
100,000?
Oh, that would be this 10,000?
Final answer?
I think it's 10,000.
10,000? Yep. Awesome. What's the difference between cohesion and adhesion? I'm giving you some pictures for an example because I like pictures.
Cohesion is the ability to stick to itself, and adhesion is the ability to stick to other polar surfaces.
Okay. Explain what you mean by stick to itself. What's the chemical principle?
The molecules attracting to each other and instead of separating and just
Okay.
slipping.
So when you're looking at water, what is attracting to what? What attraction are you talking about?
It's attracting both to itself and to other polar surfaces outside of the water, or the surfaces that aren't water.
Okay. Awesome. We'll talk more about this too. The picture on the right is called a meniscus, and you read that, in case you haven't used one before, you read that at the bottom of the meniscus, not the top of the meniscus. So the bottom of the curve is where you actually read the measurement. In case they ask you about that, which they probably won't because it's not a chemistry test, but you never know. Some things are on both. So you read at the bottom of that curve, not the top. Okay, explain how the structure of molecules contribute to their properties and functions. Give me some examples. You can be general if you want.
Well, like water is polar, so don't remember which charge is where, but it can create good like surface tension, and then also it makes that crystalline structure when it freezes. So.
Absolutely. That's a perfect segue from the last question. That's a great point.
A buckyball as well is a very rigid structure, and in turn is very rigid in real life in large quantities.
What about bonds? What about molecular bonds? How do they contribute to the functions of a molecule?
Again, segueing back into water, the hydrogen bonds are responsible for the temperatures and the cohesion and adhesion properties, I believe.
Awesome. Yep. And we'll talk about, oh, go ahead.
Certain molecules with ionic bonds, they're usually solid and they have certain properties, like having a high melting point.
Awesome. Yeah. Ionic bonds are very strong bonds. Awesome. And we'll talk more about how structured molecules contribute to their functions when we discuss the macromolecules next week. So when we discuss organic chemistry, which is a fancy way for saying lots of carbon. Okay, so great job with those. Thank you for contributing. We're going to discuss chapter 2 real quick. Chapter 1 was just kind of a summary of ideas that I just wanted you to read and kind of be familiar with before we started class. Chapter 2 is really the main start of material. So we're going to talk really quickly about these concepts and just recall this information to make sure that we're all on the same page. So atomic number, when you're looking at the periodic table, we aren't going to go too much into this kind of stuff because this isn't a chemistry exam, it's a bio exam, but these things are good to know. When you're looking at a particular element, you're going to see the chemical symbol, which C is carbon, N is nitrogen, H is hydrogen, He is helium, things like that. You're going to be able to recognize many of them. They're familiar. The number at the top of the corner is called the atomic number. That is the number of electrons and the number of protons. It sometimes is the number of neutrons, but not always. Depends on whether it's a particular isotope or not. But that number usually corresponds to at least the number of each electrons and protons. The chemical name is also going to be on it. Usually, if it's not, it's because they're trying to trick you, and that's lame, but that's okay because you need to know probably the first 10 or 12 of those anyway. So I'd go ahead and learn those, be familiar with the symbols and the numbers. The relative atomic mass, or the atomic mass at the bottom, is the averaged out number of protons and neutrons, or the weight of that nucleus of the atom, averaged out, including the different isotopes. So usually with carbon, if you look at the bottom left of this screen, the usual way of finding carbon is carbon 12. So you're going to find 6 protons and 6 neutrons most of the time. However, there are other isotopes that have 7 neutrons, some that have 8 neutrons. Remember, neutrons are neutral. So that's not going to change the charge of that isotope. It's just going to change the weight of it, which can cause some radioactivity as well. 6 protons and 6 neutrons, though, makes carbon 12. So carbon's number on the periodic table is going to be a tiny bit larger than 12, because you also will find some 13 and some carbon 14 in nature, but man, do you mostly find carbon 12. So the number is going to be approximately 12, but the reason it's a little bit off from 12 is because of those isotopes that you also find in nature. And just a little bit, remember this is not chemistry, but we're covering a little bit for the exam, the octet rule. When you look at valence shells, can anybody tell me what valence shells are for electrons?
Valence shells are the outermost shells in electrons.
Okay. So when you're looking at these, depends on how many electrons are involved with this atom, with this element. But for example, when you look at carbon, this diagram is actually wrong for carbon. Some of you may have noticed that, but when you're looking at 6 protons and 6 neutrons, you see those in the center, and then you're supposed to have 6 electrons. So what we see here is 5. There should be another one, but what that means is the atom specifically that you're talking about, in this example, carbon, wants to have a full outer shell. The full outer shell of electrons, these are orbitals that the electrons are hovering around. We think of them as rings around the nucleus of the atom. These are rings that have a fixed number of electrons and a fixed number of happy electrons. If the outer is full or at the maximum, which is usually 8, unless you get very much larger atoms, when you have 8 full amount of electrons in that final outer valence shell, the atom is happy. And so that's why you get the sharing or the taking of electrons, depending on the case. So carbon, for example, remember octet rule, oct meaning 8. It's happy if it's got 8 in its outer shell. So if carbon has 6 electrons, it's going to have 2 in its inner shell because that's the only one that's unique for that smaller group of atoms. 2 in the original shell, and then outside of that, most are going to have 8. So 2 in the first one, that means if you had 6 to start with, that means you have 4 left over in the outer shell. There should be 4 there. It's only showing 3 in the diagram. You should have 4. Now, it has 4 in the outer shell, but with the octet rule, it should have 8. It wants 8. It's happier if it has 8, which means when you look at bonds and when you look at carbon in organic chemistry, when we look at that later, and I'll actually show you a slide with some carbon molecules on it, carbon-based, you're going to see them bond usually with basically every time 4 bonds in some way, because they're going to want to do 4 covalent bonds to share electrons with other atoms. So the reason why it does 4 bonds is because if it has 4 electrons, it wants 4 more. Those can cause 4 2-electron bonds between somewhere between 2 and 4 other atoms. It may do a double bond and 2 single bonds, or it may do 4 single bonds, or it may do somewhere anywhere in there. It may even do a triple bond and 1 single bond, but 4 bonds of some sort, 4 electron pair bonds, causes carbon to have 8 electrons in its outer shell, which means the octet rule is satisfied. So we'll frequently see CH4 methane. That is carbon with 4 hydrogens bonded. So those 4 electrons from the hydrogens are bonded to the 4 electrons from the carbon, causing 4 pairs, causing the carbon to feel like it has 8, and then it's happy. So octet rule is something to remember. The atom wants to have, usually, unless it's a very large atom, it wants to have 8 full electrons in some shape or form in its outer shell, whether they're shared or whether they're its own or whether they're taken, something like that. It wants to have 8. So that's the octet rule. So talking about bonds, we have several different types of bonds, and we have primarily covalent bonding, which notice the carbon has, it's showing some of its bonds. It doesn't actually have complete bonding in that, but it's talking about the sharing of electrons. So 2 electrons, 1 from each of those atoms, those 2 carbons looking at each other. If you look where the arrows are pointing in that image at the top left, those 2 electrons by circles, they have a line in between them that's showing the covalent bond. Those carbons are still keeping their atoms, but it means that they are sharing them. So a little bit of the time they're around the north carbon, a little bit of the time they're around the south carbon. They're sharing them, they're not taking them, they're sharing them. So that's the difference. Ionic bonding is taking. So that happens when you have something so electronegative that it finds something that is not electronegative and it just steals the last electron it has. So sodium chloride, chlorine is a massively electronegative atom. Electronegativity, if we look back at this previous diagram, it is electron affinity is also called electronegativity. Chlorine is at just about the top right of that diagram. It really likes electrons, it steals them. Anything on the left side is not very electron desiring. It usually gives electrons. So something on the right side of that periodic table is going to be attracted to the left side of the periodic table to steal their electrons. So that's why we find sodium with a positive charge and we find chlorine with a negative charge, because it just loves to steal other things electrons. So those are the two primary types of bonding when you look at molecules. Polar covalent is a possibility. That is when something is electronegative, but not electronegative enough to be an ionic bond. That is called polar. Non-polar is something like carbon and hydrogen. They're both very small atoms. Neither one of them is crazily electronegative, or a carbon with itself another carbon. So those types of things are non-polar. Most organic chemistry is involving non-polar bonds. However, there is polar covalent, but it's not the same thing as ionic. It's a scale. Then you have metallic bonding. That's a little bit different. And then you have, those are with metals in the center of the periodic table. And then you have molecular bonding that is weak attractions. And those are not quite the strength of covalent or ionic bonding, but those are things like hydrogen bonding, which is explained in this image. If you look, the electronegativity of the oxygen just means that it has a polar side to that molecule. It has a negative, small partial negative charge. It is the way that that is represented is a small curvy S, and you'll see that in your textbook in some different places, but that partial charge is attracted to the partial positive charge of the hydrogen, and so that creates a weak attraction and a weak bond called hydrogen bonding. Depending on where you see it, it's also called the van der Waals forces. Those are kind of the same thing, depending on what you're talking about. They're all weak bonds between molecules. So those are the main types of bonds to know. That causes hydrogen bonding in the bottom right, and that causes water to have all of its properties. But real quick, this is different types of representations of molecules that you may see in your studies in the textbook. So there are 4 main types. The second one down is one you probably won't see. That is an organic chemistry focus. It's 3-dimensional. Lewis structure is what you'll see a lot of times, where it's just lines and dots for electrons. Any line is a single bond. If you have 2 lines right on top of each other, like an equals, that's going to be a double bond. If you have 3 lines, it's a triple bond. Each one is representing a pair of electrons, one from each atom. So right now, the nitrogen in that representation is bonded to, 1 electron is bonded to the electron of 1 hydrogen, and it does that 3 times around, and then it has 2 leftover electrons that it's keeping for itself. So the other version, the line wedge dash right underneath that, notice there's a wedge and there's a dash. It's showing the dimensionality of it. The wedge is what is coming out, and the dash is what is going back into the picture. Then you have ball and stick and space filling. Those are 2 different ways to represent the 3-dimensionality of it, showing the orbitals, kind of giving an approximation for that. So usually a space filling model, the larger the atom, the bigger the space it will take up compared to the rest. So for example, if you look on the left, this ball and stick even, the gray is usually represented for hydrogen and the red is usually oxygen. So notice how much bigger the red is, or sometimes the blue can be oxygen, it depends. In this example, the red is carbon. The blue and the red are bigger than the gray because the gray is hydrogen and hydrogen is super small. So those are just some examples of how to represent it. And also, of course, the classic that we'll see when we're doing things like balancing equations at the bottom, you see C6H12O6. That's a representation of glucose. Each number at the bottom right, the subscript of the letter, is referring to how many atoms are in the molecule. If you have a number at the beginning of that molecule, for example, 2C6H12O6, that 2 at the beginning, it's a prefix, is referring to how many molecules you would have. So if you were asked how many atoms, how many carbon atoms you had in 2 glucose molecules, and you had a 2C6H12O6, you would just multiply the 2 by the subscript of that atom. So 2 times 6 would be 12 total carbons in those 2 molecules. So I'm going to pause for a quick second and make sure nobody has any questions for me.
How did you guys find the pH of the lemons earlier?
Are you asking me or are you asking the group?
Anyone who knows, because I have the formula that's the negative log H plus, but I don't know how to use it.
So the number that you saw, 9.8 times 10 to the negative third, is the concentration of hydrogen ions. So what you're going to do is just input that number into your equation. So negative log of the 9.8 times 10 to the negative third. Then all you do is just math out what that number actually is. You take away the 10 to kind of stuff, which leaves you with, I think, 0.0098. And then from that, you just take your negative log. You will be allowed to have a calculator on the exam. So you just take the negative log using your calculator, and then you're good to go. And it was 2.01, but they may ask you to approximate, it depends. All right, we're almost done, you guys. I'll try and get us out in 9 minutes. All right, sharing for 1 or 2 last screens. Everybody can see properties of water?
Yes.
Okay, so the high heat of evaporation is one of the properties of water. It takes a really high temperature to evaporate water, and it takes a high heat capacity. It takes a lot of water, a lot of temperature to heat that water. So all of that together is why sweat and homeostasis are important, and why sweat is important, because sweat allows us to cool off. We sweat to get to cause that temperature to leave our bodies through water. And then homeostasis allows us to keep our body temperature in check. All of those 4 concepts work together. They're all the same thing. Knowing the properties of water and kind of the reasons why they're important and how they affect the world is kind of helpful. For example, solvency, water is considered to be the universal solvent, and its polarity that we pointed out with the hydrogen bonds and H2O, it attracts both polar and ionic molecules. Anything with a partial or full charge, it will be interested in bonding with. So really the only thing that it doesn't like to mix with is oil. As you know, oil and water don't mix unless you shake them and really mess them up, like when you're trying to make a salad dressing. But anything that is partially polar, anything that's partially ionic is going to be attracted and dissolve within that molecule by molecule. So water is known as the universal solvent because of its polarity. We also talked about cohesion versus adhesion. Cohesion is the hydrogen bonds between molecules caused by the partial charges between hydrogen and oxygen in those. And those partial charges between molecules cause it to stick together, which causes surface tension. That's what allows a spider to walk on the water, or some lizards actually, and I've actually seen a car drive across the water really quickly. That's actually a competition somewhere in Europe. I can't remember where. But anything up to car, as long as you're driving quickly and you have nothing breaking the surface tension. So you have to be very careful how you design your car. The other part of that is adhesion, and cohesion. Remember, co means with. So a co-op is with other people, cooperative. Co means with, so with other molecules, other water molecules, but ad means to. So adhesion means sticking to other things. That's the other half of this equation. Adhesion is talking about, for example, if you have a cuvette or a small glass, things like that. If you look, and you can see the effect if you have a very narrow object like a cuvette or like a vial, but it is the same principle even if it's a wider container. You just can't see it as easily. Both surface tension and the polarity attracted to the static within the glass is going to have a little bit of electricity within it, a little bit of polarity as well. So the water is going to stick to the surface, and it's going to be attracted to those charges. And because of that, it's going to pull slightly up the sides of the tube. And so that's why you saw the meniscus, which is the kind of almost U-shaped, if it's narrow, the U-shaped water line, because surface tension causes the water to follow the other molecules as those first pioneer molecules go up the side of the cuvette. So cohesion and adhesion work together. This is also, I didn't put this, but it's also the reason why plants are able to do transpiration. That water travels up through the roots, up into the stem, up out through the leaves, and that whole process, the negative pressure is caused by the water leaving and pulling its fellow water molecules behind it. So this cohesion and adhesion is what allows plants to breathe and use water. Acids and bases. We talked about this just a second ago. If you are given, there are two kinds of questions. If you're given the hydrogen ion concentration, or they may say hydronium, which is H3O plus, you're going to, first of all, simplify that concentration. Like I said, take the 10 times, take the exponent out of it, and then you're just going to use the negative log on your calculator. If you're given the pH, then you're going to use the negative pH as the exponent. So for example, if the pH is 3, you're going to do 10 to the negative 3 to find your hydrogen ion concentration. It's just backwards, it's inverse. One is the log and one is the exponent. All right, that was the last part of the textbook. So do you have any questions about those before we go over some things afterwards, just some administrative stuff?
Can you go back to that previous slide?
That one, is it so fascinating?
No, the one before that.
Sure. This is just an example of what is on the pH scale. These are very helpful just to have an idea. Lemon is about a 2. Hydrochloric acid, which you find in your stomach, is about a 0 up to a 1. Pure hydrochloric acid is known as a 0, but our stomach is a 1. Bleach and drain cleaner are not very safe things to have around just because they are so basic. Lye is a 12. That's why it was very, very dangerous to wash your clothing when they used plain lye. That's why we have such diluted soaps now. And then water, blood, milk, things like that are in the center.
What does it mean use the negative pH as the exponent?
So use the pH as the exponent. You just have to add a negative because remember you're using the negative log. So you would use the exponent. You would put the exponent instead of using the logarithm. You would just put it the inverse of that. So you would use it as the exponent. You just have to add a negative number because you're looking for a number less than 1, not a number above 1, because you're looking for, there's not that much acid or base in a mixture.
What?
What'd you say?
I'm sorry, I don't really understand.
Okay, so if you're given the pH, let's say you're given a pH of 4. What you're going to do is you're going to need to figure out the concentration of hydrogen atoms, hydrogen ions, right? So you're going to use that 4 to figure out what that concentration is. So in order to find the concentration, you're just going to inverse this whole process. Originally, you were given the concentration, you had to find the pH. Now you're given the pH, you have to find the concentration. So it's just going backwards in that. So you're going to take the logarithm and do it backwards. That's all it is. You're just taking an exponent instead. So you're taking it 10 to the 4th, because 4 is your exponent, it's your pH, but you have to put a negative in front of it because you took the negative log. So the inverse of the negative log is 10 to the negative of your pH. It's just the inverse of that same equation. Does that make sense?
So we would have like negative log 10, negative 4, or 10.
So you're not actually using a log in your, if you have the pH, you don't need to use the log. The log is, you would use a logarithm if you're given the concentration. There is no logarithm in the calculation if you're given the pH because you're doing it backwards.
We just simplified 10 to the negative 4th, and that's our concentration.
That's it. It's super simple.
Okay.
So you just take the pH, you make it negative, and then you use that as your exponent to calculate the concentration.
Makes sense.
Yep. It seems really, really confusing and frustrating, but it's easier than we give it credit for because we're so worried that it's going to be harder. I will attach a few more videos this week about pH, just so you guys have some extra practice. All right, so this week, as you could tell, we're using Moodle, and you have already used that. Thank you. If you haven't used Moodle messaging, just go ahead and send me a message just to make sure you know how to use it. We are also using the Smart Book this week, the McGraw-Hill publisher site. You have directions in the Monday morning memo how to enroll for that. A lot of you have, great. If you haven't, just take care of that. Do your Smart Book homework by the end of the weekend. And AP Classroom, we will be doing extra practice starting next week. I'll show you then how to enroll there. I encourage you for all of these websites, use the same username and password. Don't confuse yourself with having like 6 different ones. It's not going to be helpful. There's no need. You might as well just use the same thing for all of them. So if you're enrolling in AP Classroom next week, use the same login. This week, feel free to use the same login for SmartBook. Also, eMind is our online lab simulation that we're going to be using for several different things, not for every lab by any means, but we'll use it for a few. And we will be starting using that and enrolling after fall break. So that's just to show you the resources we'll be using. Don't worry about them yet. Really quick about the SmartBook. Looking through the problems on SmartBook, it's going to be asking you some questions about the reading. Excuse me, I think I've about run out of voice. I noticed, and it was brought to my attention, that there are some questions that kind of grade a little funky. They will look a little bit confusing and you'll think you have the right answer, and then it may say that you're wrong, even though it's obvious that you're right. Don't stress about it. I think there were maybe 2 or 3 questions like that. It's not something that I can change. The publisher is actually the one that creates those SmartBook assignments. I will submit that to them and ask them to change it. But in the meantime, if you see there are some, like, for example, one question, just to give you an example, is asking, where is each of these parts of the atom found within the atom? And there are protons and neutrons and electrons, and you have to place next to it what is present where. So 2 of those things, protons and neutrons, as we know, are found in the nucleus of the atom. Well, apparently it thinks one version of the word nucleus should belong to one answer, and both of them belong in the nucleus. So really, does it matter which word nucleus you put next to which? It doesn't matter. But their grading is just kind of finicky sometimes. So if there are 2 or 3 questions about that, don't feel like you got anything wrong. You didn't. Their grading is just funky. So don't stress out about that. Real quick, in case you were looking to get a study resource outside of this and kind of work along with me or get some practice tests, Barron's and Princeton Review are very well known. They have a lot of great practice tests. They give you study techniques. I am actually using 5 Steps to a 5, which is one that teachers recommend, especially for teachers and to use alongside of class. If you would like to get one, feel free to get one of these. These are well recommended, or whatever you find, I'm sure will be great. Anything is going to afford you extra practice. However, I did want to give you the caveat: do not complete these instead of your homework. This class will give you a grade. I encourage you to prioritize your course grade before you prioritize outside resources. And at the end of class, we will have at least a week, if not 2 weeks, on your own that we won't be learning new material, that you will be able to work on these as well. To do anything, any last minute studying, any last minute practice tests you want to do before the test, especially focus on those then. You can use them alongside our class, you're welcome to, but don't prioritize them over your homework. That will not get you a very good grade if you say, I did Princeton Review, but I didn't do your paper. That is not going to work well. So please keep that in mind to prioritize. All right, let's talk about this week's homework real quick. We've talked about the note-taking assignment for just a minute. Remember, all of that is informal. You do not have to include MLA. You do not have to stress out about it. All I want to see is just a reflection of how you felt the homework went and how you felt the note-taking went, if you had a particular preference of one type of note-taking over the others. You do not have to make your handwriting perfect. If you can understand it and it will benefit you, that is what I care about. I think that's pretty much all I had to say. Don't stress about MLA. That was the main thing. We'll talk about MLA in the future. SmartBook, just make sure you register with the SmartBook website. Most of you have, and answer those questions. That will help you study the material we talked about in class. I'll add some more pH calculation practice from some YouTube videos. Go look at Crash Course, look at Bozeman Science is another YouTube channel I recommend. I think I linked them right under Crash Course on that resources page. They have pH calculations as well. So those are super helpful. I'll add some more work throughs as well this week. So any questions before we end class?
I know you said that the handwriting didn't have to be perfect. So I'm just making sure I'm not submitting like my notes for you to read them, right? I'm just submitting them as like proof of completion that I took notes.
I would appreciate being able to read them to be able to point out if there's anything blaringly obvious that maybe you should reconsider how you do it, but I'm not reading them like they're a paper. So as
Okay,
long as you can
I'll
read them
redo them
and
all that.
mostly interpret them, we'll be okay.
Okay.
But I would encourage you to always write so that you can interpret your own handwriting. If you
I can
can,
interpret
people will
it,
be.
but it's like that kind of handwriting where you know exactly what you've written, but no one else does.
Well, I guess we'll find out, won't we?
Yes.
Okay, it's 9:06. Anybody else have any questions?
Um,
If there are individual questions, I'm happy to stay after and talk.
I took screenshots of those faulty questions. Should I send those to you?
That is
No.
okay. I have that information already.
Okay.
So don't, thank you though. Also, in case anybody was wondering, I will be uploading the PowerPoint slideshow as a resource for you after class, and I will be uploading the recording of this video as well. So you will have everything that we talked about in class tonight accessible. Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much for coming to our first class. I hope it was as fun for you as it was for me. I look forward to talking with you next week. We will be diving more into topics, doing more discussion and organic chemistry, and it'll be super fun. Make sure you read my Monday morning memo. If you have any questions about the homework, you let me know. I'm accessible on Moodle, and I will see you guys next week. Thank you for coming.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye.